Gonna get this part three on out the way. We already had part one. Well, Ron and Mingo giving the introduction, and we just did a second part with um, it is Colin Albert involved. Now we're gonna get to whether or not if this is lazy police work or shady police work. With that being said, here we go.
When you first move into a new house, there are a few things that you're going to do immediately. The first one, and I have always pre-planned this, pre-scheduled this, someone needs to come in and change every single lock in the house. You don't know who the previous owner gave the house keys to. You don't know who still has them. Why risk it? A family moves into their new home, and there are just like a paperwork stuff coming with it. I mean, you could maybe say that the house.
And FYI, I will be doing. This is part three we on. For the people that didn't get part two, I'm gonna try to do part two on Rumble later on tonight. So with being said, let's enjoy this part.
Is charming, objectively speaking. They've got a spacious backyard with a pool. It's 3 floors. They do have this interesting flagpole at the front of the property, but they are just so focused. This family is so focused on getting situated, unpacking all their boxes. But it feels like a weird social experiment because periodically through the day, people will start randomly showing up. People will stop their cars, get out, take photos of this house landscape. They turn their phone. What's wrong with people? It's a normal family home. This is not a landmark. This is not a massive mansion with Christmas decorations up. It's a random house. What are they doing? Others are driving by the house and doing these very convoluted, random windows like, why are they doing 25 three-point turns right now? Like they're in some sort of simulation and it's a glitch. Are they practicing for some driving test? Why do they keep doing this? It's not even necessary. It's not like they're going anywhere. They're just doing convoluted turns. Why specifically in front of their house that they just bought? What's even more interesting is the pictures listed on Zillow show the basement. And the basement floors originally looked normal. The previous residents used a good chunk of the basement as a workout room. So in the listing pictures, you have these American flags on the wall. There are weight benches. And because it's a workout room, the floor is covered with gym mats, those black rubber mats that you piece together like a puzzle. However, when the new owners move in, basement floors, gym mats have been taken off, and now it's just a random mix of plywood. It's not even hardwood floors, not carpet, plywood. And it's not one consistent type of plywood, not one consistent layer of plywood. It looks like random patches of plywood.
Basically, every single part of this part of the basement here, of this part of the house, the floor has been taken up. With all of this, it's just hodgepodge, right? It just looks like it was thrown down. So the actual floor is ripped up.
Let's say you've got plywood flooring and I spilled tomato juice down one side and you can't get it out. Would you go through the trouble of replacing the entire roof? Or maybe just that patch? That's kind of what it looks like. Why are there patches of different types of plywood? Is that a new thing that the previous owners did right before moving out? I mean, that's up for debate. Everything is being debated by the internet. Everything about this house is being debated. Not even by the new owners, but people online. People with abilities, whether you believe them or not, I guess is subjective, up to each person. They're saying that they can see and read the energy, and they're posting these ominous videos of them reading cards into the house. And they warn everyone, this house, the energy here, it's not over. What you have to do is look at what's left over. It's far from over. Someone will have to step in. They think the house is suspicious. Other netizens online are like, okay, that's a little much. However, we agree with you. It is suspicious. Like the fact that the house went up for sale in November of 2022. Nobody lists the house for sale right before the holidays. Nobody's moving at that time. Additionally, the house is originally listed for $949,000, but ends up selling for $905,000, a $44,000 hit. in an area where real estate is in such high demand that usually there's bidding wars.
How long did you sell?
A few months. There's something inside that house. The internet feels it. Everybody knows about it except the new homeowners. In fact, they moved from a different area, had no idea what was going on inside this house until they moved in, saw people driving by taking pictures of their new house. That is when they realized that they had just purchased 34 Fairview Road, previously owned by Brian Albert. The house in which John O'Keefe's body was found dead in the front lawn. And the seller's agent, Brian Albert's real estate agent,
Did it say anything?
they didn't say anything. And
Mm-mm.
that realtor works for a firm that is owned by Carrie Roberts' sister. This is part 3 of the Jim McBean case.
Why am I not surprised at the shadiness?
We would like to thank today's sponsors who have made it possible for Rotten Mango to support the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, Massachusetts. They're a locally known cancer research center that also provides support for patients and families similar to John O'Keefe's sister, who has since passed away from brain cancer. This episode's partnerships have also made it possible to support Rotten Mango's growing team, and we'd also like to thank you guys for your continued support. As always, full show notes are available at RottenMangoPodcast.com. A few disclaimers. There are mentions of driving under the influence, alleged physical assault, as well as drug usage, so please watch at your own discretion. This episode is only part 3 of a 4-part series that is spanning to be probably longer than every single Game of Thrones episode combined. I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to pick out some information, but I feel like everything is pertinent, and there's 2 separate trials. So there's trial 1, trial 2, a lot of statements, a lot of testimony have been condensed and or combined for brevity's sake. If you have not seen part 1 or part 2, I highly recommend that you go watch that, because there's no way that any of this is going to make sense without watching those first 2 parts. In addition, I will try to do like a very brief recap, and all I can say is this is a case that consists of every single person on this board. Some of them were at 34 Fairview Road, which is a house owned by the main Alberts. The Albert is a massive family that I feel like Canton, Massachusetts, which is a 30-minute drive from Boston. If there's 10 people, 7 of them are Albert related. They're either married into the Albert family, like Julie Albert is married to Chris Albert, who's Brian Albert's brother, or they're married in through Jennifer McCabe, is Nicole Albert's sister, who's married to Brian Albert. I mean, it's just a mess. And then outside of 34 Fairview Road, on January 29th, 2022, Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found in the front lawn in front of a flagpole. Everyone inside the house that night, because it was a cop party, a bunch of cops coming together to drink and drive that night. They say he never entered the house. They say what most likely happened was John O'Keefe's girlfriend, Karen Reed, hid him with her car and left him for dead. Karen Reed, on the other hand, is saying that's not what happened at all. In fact, I am getting framed.
You're not John with my car.
And these are the cast of characters. So please go watch part 2, go watch part 1. It's like, I think at that point it's like 5 hours.
6 hours.
6 hours. There's just no way that I can recap anything more. But I will go over the colors. Dark red. This red color here is the main Albert family. So the main Albert couple, their children. And then you've got the orange, which is Chris Albert's family. This is Brian Albert's brother, his wife Julie, you've got son Colin, and then you've got the yellows. The yellows are the McCabe's. They're like the Alberts. You know, they're related to the Alberts because of Nicole and Jen McCabe. And then anyone related directly by Karen. So they're associated with this case through Karen, which is mainly just sort of defense attorneys. They're going to be in pink. Anyone who has a light blue color, such as John O'Keefe and maybe even ATF Brian Haha Higgins, that means that they are law enforcement officers or they have control over law enforcement. So these are all cops, these are all feds, except for the exception of Chris Albert, who is not really a law enforcement officer, but he sits on the Canton Select Board, which controls the Canton Police Department as a whole. It's 5 people. He's one of them. They get to appoint the police chief of the Canton Police Department. Brian Albert also has another brother named Kevin Albert, who is a detective of the Canton Police Department. So there's just a lot of cops involved.
Did Kevin Albert, does he kind of talk about, is he part of the case at all, or he's just related?
He's part of it. And then anyone in dark blue are investigating officers that are investigating the death of John O'Keefe. But joke's on them, because their investigation is going to be investigated by the FBI for how abysmal it is. And we also have multiple different law enforcement agencies at play here. So we have the Boston Police Department, which John O'Keefe was a Boston cop. Brian Albert, before he retired, coincidentally, conveniently, right after John O'Keefe's death, he was the head of the fugitive unit at the Boston Police Department. And then you've got the Canton Police Department, so John O'Keefe ends up passing away in Canton. So they are the initial people to respond to the call. So these three right here, this boy Sean, Paul, Michael, you're not gonna like any of these people. Like most of these people you're not gonna like. They're Canton cops. And then you've got Kenneth Berkowitz, Canton Police Chief. And then you've got Brian Tolley, Yuri Buchanan, and Michael Proctor. They're part of the Massachusetts State Police. So these people, the state police officers, come in because the Canton police have to recuse themselves. And then you've got the feds, the FBI, that are actually investigating the investigation. So 4 different law enforcement agencies. I do want to say that nobody has been charged, well, nobody has been convicted of a crime. There were 2 trials that ended in an acquittal. Any conspiracies, any theories, there's a lot of medicine discourse surrounding this case. And I will say it's very difficult to separate the emotion, the conspiracies, as well as what might be a neighborhood rumor versus what might actually have some truth to it. So do your own research. I know you guys are smart enough, so before you make your own decision, opinion, judgment on any of the parties involved, do your own research. And anything I say is alleged. It's publicly available information. It's recaps of online discourse as well as pulled from transcripts of the 2 trials. So with that being said, let's get started. There is a place called D&E Pizza and Subs. It's exclusively made for takeout. There are very let alone any tables. They sell pizzas, chicken wings, family favorite recipes, mac and cheese bites fried in a thick batter, a cheeseburger hot sub. This is an interesting one. It's a chicken Caesar salad pizza. It's just like if you were to get a chicken Caesar salad, throw it on top of a pizza, a chicken Caesar salad pizza. I mean, it was pretty self-explanatory. They also have something called a triple-decker sandwich. If you want something a little bit lighter, they've got egg salad, cold sub. The menu is very expensive. And if you order online, you get a whopping 5% discount. But nobody wants to order online. Nobody wants to order at all. Because Pizza Shop is owned by Chris Albert, the brother of Brian Albert, whose front lawn John O'Keefe was found dead on. One review, this is from 2018, so this is before all of the suspicious activity has even occurred. 2018, one reviewer writes about this suspicious little pizza shop. Second time there, and both times I had an issue. First time, employees had a bad attitude. Second time, they forgot to give me my dressing for my salad, and by the time that they delivered the dressing, the chicken was disgusting. It was cold. I got a great salad, and they said they brought their house dressing, which is a mix of Greek and Italian. It was disgusting. The owner kept saying nothing was wrong. Another one says, you better hope you don't get the blockhead that answered the phone for me when I was placing my order. I wanted to go get my credit card to read the number off of, and he told me I should have had that prepared already. To which another reviewer reads, they need a little work done in the customer service, because I definitely overheard a guy calling me a piece of shit when I called back to add a soda to my order. And then they tried to laugh it off later when he noticed that I was still on the phone. Then when I got my pizza, it was burnt like hell. Like, how the hell do you burn cheese pizza with no toppings? And while all of this is ongoing, this place, these are reviews from 2018. Somehow they survived 2018. They survived the pandemic. And even now, in 2025, this place is still going on. This place is still open with one medicine company. How is the Albert Pizza place still in business? There cannot be that many people in Canton and the surrounding area that would support their business. Why don't people boycott them and run them out of town? The top comment responds, well, perhaps the business has other purposes than selling food. As with any internet theory and or conspiracy, this could all be a made-up delusion crafted by a random shadowy internet figure who has mashed potatoes for brains and a working Wi-Fi router just because words have been strung together into semi-coherent thoughts does not make it true or factual. I'm not here to sway your opinion about a conspiracy. Let me say an interesting conspiracy. I did get sucked into the rabbit hole. I turned into mashed potatoes for brains because it's just weird, and it oddly starts with rice pudding. In New York City, if you walk down two of some of the most popular streets, you probably come across what people call a culinary mystery. Two restaurants, most expensive areas in New York City with massive storefronts. They always look empty for some reason. It's just like a dessert shop. It feels sterile. It's called Rice to Riches. It's like the most niche dessert shop. There's so many dessert shops in New York City where they do all the trendy Instagram desserts and they still close down because money is hard. But this is rice pudding that's made fresh daily. That you can get in flavors like coconut coma, Oreo Gaza, Struts and Rocky Road, hazelnut chocolate bear hug, and then you just add toppings to it. The founding family of the rice pudding shop is very wealthy, which we're confused. Locals are wondering, who the hell is getting rich off of rice pudding? No, they're not. The restaurant opened up in 2002, and by 2005, the founder was arrested for operating what prosecutors called probably one of the largest gambling operations ever in Suffolk County.
Actually, that.
Yes, an illegal sports betting ring that was bringing in $21 million annually.
Okay, so that's still is that part.
No, the founder says they're two different businesses. He said he's never mixed the money. He's not money laundering. This turns out a crime front. That's crazy. It's just a coincidence, he says. It's a coincidence. There's no connection between the gambling and the two dessert shops. The dessert shop is 100% not a crime front. That's what he says. That dessert shop is still open. There's no proof that there's money laundering happening. I mean, there's still two of them in New York City in the most expensive areas.
So he's arrested and he's forced to bring or something.
Yeah, he got out. Now, to complicate things even further, everybody does say rice pudding is actually pretty good there. They say it's actually very addicting. One comment made not because the rice pudding is so good, I'm actually going to contribute to their gambling pop-up. Another person writes, the rice pudding is worth the organized crime here. That is what netizens believe is happening with pizza without the good pizza. There is no evidence. What they believe based off the bad reviews of the restaurant predating 2022 and pictures of the food and locals saying, I don't know who goes there.
They're
except
just
for smelling
lazy
cops and,
looking.
some random young kids. They believe there is no way that these people are staying open for business and profiting to feed their whole family. It doesn't make sense. One internet rumor reads, I heard from a friend that Colin Albert was selling drugs out of D&E Pizza and his daddy knew all about it. To which someone responds, of course his daddy knew. Who do you think he gets drugs from? To be fair, another netizen comments, just no proof, just rumors. Now, one netizen who has never met a bush and certainly does not beat around it, just puts it quite frankly, D&E is a drug front. John O'Keefe and Karen Reed pull up to the house. John jumps out, goes into the driveway, makes it to the front of the house, where he mistakes the garage door for the side door. Now, that's what's so confusing about 34th Avenue. There are 3 doors at the front. You've got the main front door, and you've got a side door that opens straight up into the family living room. And then you've got a garage door that opens straight into
How
the
many
garage.
doors they got?
They say that John O'Keefe went through, he thought he was going through the side door into the family room, but he ends up going in to the garage. And he sees people, mainly Colin, engaging in and or selling drugs. That's the theory. Perhaps there are even large quantities of drugs stored in the garage to the point where the Brian Albert, he can't be like, I don't know what Colin's doing. I don't know what he's doing in my garage. And a fight ensues because nobody parks their car in the garage. They say that they just use it for storage. A fight ensues, this is the theory, and John O'Keefe is incapacitated. Everyone, mostly Caitlin and the girls, are told to get out. It is painless. We know why the Albert might want to lie. We know why Jen McCabe might want to lie. Why everybody on this board might want to lie. But why are Julie Nagel, her brother Ryan Nagel, Sarah Levinson, why are they lying?
Yeah, why?
They're also protecting themselves is this theory. Caitlin and all the kids, the girls, they're told to get out while this is happening. John O'Keefe is subdued. Once everybody is out, he's transferred to the basement. This is the internet doing. This is with the netizen friends. She smells blood. John drugs.
Yeah, okay,
that
yeah,
John
that's
O'Keefe
possible.
his job, that the drugs
I had to
job
think about it for a
through
second.
police stations and police investigations. When officers confiscate drugs and do massive drug busts, it wouldn't be the first time that they take those drugs and they resell them for a profit, because who's going to come after them? The cops, they are the cops. That is the conspiracy with zero proof. Now, I don't think that this conspiracy would have gotten this far on the internet had it not been for the fact that August 2023, so this is like a full year and a half after John O'Keefe passes, at a Canton Select Board meeting that this guy decides he's not going to show up to. Chris Albert, one of the five selectmen, he's like, I'm going to sit this one out. Chris Albert, he's not there. However, a woman named Helena Rafferty is there. Helena Rafferty is the new Canton police chief. She replaces Kenneth Berkowitz.
Crooked,
Also,
crooked,
Kenneth
crooked.
Berkowitz dies. Unrelated, he has a heart attack and he dies.
Oh, damn, ain't that convenient?
But he does retire the same year that John O'Keefe is not there.
So John O'Keefe found dead.
After about 6 months, he retires, and
Was
then
there an investigation going on against him? Like the FBI were on him.
yes, we're on my guard. Yes.
Huh.
Oh, but it gets weirder because Helena Rafferty, she becomes the new Canton police chief, the first female police chief.
Was she directly from the department as well? Was she like transferred?
Oh no, all from Canton.
So they all know each other already.
Yes. So she's the new police chief. She also randomly retired recently.
All these people still going on the trial for them. Police chief Helena Rafferty was retiring if some announcement came the same day as making statements in the second trial of Karen Reed, and then Karen passed away.
Yes, from a heart attack.
Really? Like no suspicion, nothing.
I don't think it was suspicious. I don't think it's related to this case, but what is suspicious is one of the last things he does on the job, which I'm going to go into later. Now, Helena Rafferty takes over, and she states in a meeting, I know it's been circulated that John O'Keefe had conversations with Canton police detectives related to drug activity in that neighborhood. John O'Keefe, to give you some context, is a Boston police officer. So he drives to Boston every day to go to work, 30 minutes. When he lives in the city, in the town of Canton, he reports that there's drug activity in Canton. Now, does he report it to his boss in Boston? No, because there's no jurisdiction. So he goes to the detectives at Canton Police Department. Who's the detective at the Canton Police Department? Kevin Albert.
You went to Kevin Albert?
He was one of the people. And he tells them, hey, I think there's suspicious drug activity going on in Canton. And Helena Rafferty, the new police chief, says, well, I'm here to confirm that John O'Keefe absolutely did reach out to Canton detectives related to drug activity in the neighborhood. He reached out to the detective unit. However, none, and let me repeat, that none of John O'Keefe's well-documented correspondence with us included anyone alleged to be involved in this case. Nobody believes her. What we're gonna
We
do
don't believe you. We need more people.
that John O'Keefe told Kevin Albert and other Canton detectives that there is drug activity in this neighborhood. And this is where it gets suspicious. Chris Albert, Julie Albert, they have been neighbors with John O'Keefe for years. They recently moved away. But for years, they were 2 houses down. They never got along with John O'Keefe. They never really talked to him. The day that John O'Keefe passes away, he goes to D&E Pizza. Some people think he's there to scope out what's going on. He goes to D&E Pizza, and that night, Chris Albert is the one to invite John O'Keefe to the Waterfall Bar.
Are you thinking that he rarely goes to D&D? Or...
Nobody really knows, but the fact that he went the day of, people think is very strange.
Okay, another coincidence.
I'll be back in a second, y'all.
More of a coincidence is when they get to Waterfall Bar, Karen Reed starts asking to go to D&E Pizza because she had heard that sometimes they open up after hours to make a pizza.
Okay, so the owner of the event on that day, Chris show up in the morning time. John O'Keefe shows up for a meal. The lunch. Right. So Chris met John O'Keefe. Said, hey, my old neighbor, we didn't like each other, but come hang out with us tonight.
He says that they were friendly, but there's evidence perhaps that they were not.
Right.
Yeah.
John shows up with Karen.
To the Waterfall Bar.
Waterfall Bar. And then Karen had, oh, D&D, should we go? Can we go? It's like like I think the main parent they would go another day.
No, let's go tonight.
Tonight.
Instead of going to 34th Fairview, let's go to UNE.
Okay.
And then they don't end up going. They go to 34th Fairview, and John O'Keefe ends up dead. So people think this is just too many coincidences in one. It doesn't make any sense. So this is where the theory comes into play, that John O'Keefe was killed inside the house. We briefly went over it because there's multiple theories. Some people think that the house is a house full of swingers, and maybe John O'Keefe was confronted by Brian Haha Higgins, about the conversations that he had with Karen Reed and all of that. There are a lot of side theories, but I think if you look at the pictures of 34th Fairview, it's going viral on TikTok. The outlets officially list their home for sale November 17th of 2022. People start online studying these pictures to see if it's feasible. A big running theory is that John goes into the house. He's either in the garage, where there is suspiciously this like paint spill, red paint that's splattered all over the garage floor. Some people think that the paint was poured on top of blood that had been scrubbed off. Some people think it's just a paint spill. Some people are like, we can't even confirm when this paint spill happened. There's just a lot of, we're going to circle back to this.
Red paint.
Yeah, it's like a dark burgundy.
Then I would see a part of the house is that color. It wouldn't be that color, right?
I don't see anything that was that color in the
Dark
house.
red.
Other people think that this occurred in the basement. A fight breaks out in the basement, in the workout room, which would explain the laceration to his head. It could have been sustained from a dumbbell. It could have been sustained from any of the heavy weights down there. Regardless, all the theories end with John O'Keefe suffering a fatal injury to the back of his head. Nobody thinks that any of this was premeditated. In fact, a lot of the people that believe in the DNA theory, they believe that all these guys, they just want to beat John O'Keefe up. That's their game plan. And maybe it works with other cops. You beat them up and you say, hey, so basically what's going to happen is you're going to shut up about this. They make him feel fear. That's the energy that people believe is existing inside of 34th Fairview Road that very night. He suffers a fatal injury to the back of the head, and everybody starts freaking out because it wasn't supposed to go this far. Chloe, the German Shepherd, starts attacking John O'Keefe. The residents and the partygoers ultimately freak out even more, and they decide that they're just going to lay his body on the front lawn, and they're going to blame the snowplow drivers. They're going to say that John was drunk. He gets out of Karen Reed's car. Karen drives away, leaving him, which was a happy coincidence for them, and John gets hit by a snowplow. People have died from getting hit by industrial city snowplows. He's drunk. He didn't see the snowplow coming. The snowplow driver at 3 a.m. didn't see John, and they hit him, and he dies. So they wait until the snowplow driver drives off, does their route of 34th Fairview. Once they hear that snowplow go through, they move his body outside. By the next morning, Karen inserts herself into the situation, thus giving them the perfect opening. Again, this is all alleged, nothing has been proven. That's the running theory of some internet users. And they just need to know if it's feasible to bring John's body out of the basement without being seen by the neighbors. The most popular theory comes from the basement opens into the backyard. There's what they call bulkhead doors. So it looks like one of those storm shelters. It's like a plank of wood. You know when you are on the street in New York and you see those steel doors that open and then you walk down, it's the bottom of like, it's kind of like that, but not as official. It's just like a wooden door. You lift it up, there's a few steps, and then a regular door, you walk in, and that's the basement.
Look at that. Yeah. We're into the backyard.
Yeah. When you get out of that, you're in the backyard. You turn to the side, there's a fence. You open up that fence, directly in front of you is the front porch. And that is the darkest part of the whole property. They believe that someone went, one of these partygoers, parked a car on the side of the street. Then the others came in through the back side door and dragged John O'Keefe's body towards the front porch in the middle of the night, long after Karen and I went home. Put this the floor plan of the house to make this theory feasible. Some people are saying these are the wild cards. All of Brian Albert's friends, because other than that, family has a reason to lie for family. But what about Julie Mabel, Brian Nickel, Sarah Levinson? Why would they say, no, I didn't see John O'Keefe coming inside. No, I didn't see anyone to the basement. Why would they say these things? If you don't believe that they're involved in the drug theory, why would they lie? It doesn't make sense. Sarah Levinson is a nurse. Why would she risk her career for any of these people? Adding to the theory the most when you look at the floor plan of this house is that this is not an open concept first floor, which when everybody testifies, you almost envision it to be. They're like, yeah, you walk in through the front door, if I'm in the kitchen, I see everyone. I see you in the living room, I see you in the kitchen, I see everybody. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. The front door is like a vestibule. Okay, you walk in, and on your right is this small dining room. And then to the left is a small entrance with the library, the study. And then there's stairs leading right up to the front, like right in front of you. There's stairs going upstairs. And then behind it, there's a door that you open and it leads into the basement. So there's stairs going down into the basement.
You're saying there's a door to the basement?
Yes.
To get into the stairs going down?
Yes. And then if you were to keep that door open, behind that door is the small opening to the kitchen. And these are small openings. These are not massive, grand, arched entryways into each room. These are door-sized openings. So no, if you're in the kitchen, you might not even see if someone walks in. You might not even see if someone goes into the basement if that basement door is kept open. So all of these could justify why maybe some of Brian Albert Jr., Birthday Brian's friends, didn't see John O'Keefe that night if we were to have actually been in the house. Netizens think this makes perfect sense, especially now with
Okay, we back.
selling the house. The house had been in the Albert family for decades. Albert, this Albert, Prince Albert, Kevin Albert, all of them grew up in that house and they just randomly decided to sell it. If you look at the purchase history, it says that this was purchased in 2010. That's not true. Brian Albert purchased it from his parents in 2010. It was owned by his parents before that. Furthermore, there are rumors that Brian Albert filled the pool in his backyard before selling the house. He filled it to the brim with concrete so that it's nearly impossible to go into the pool unless you have some sort of warrant. Or even the amount of resources that it would go into digging up that pool, how legally exhausting would it be to fight something like that back and forth? The rumors state that Brian Albert put bloody flooring from the basement into that pool, Chloe's body into that pool because Chloe was missing. Into that pool, and then filled it in.
Yep,
with
that
concrete.
the dog
However,
went
that
missing.
doesn't make sense because, well, for one, the new owners would have every right to dig up that filled-in pool, and with the attention that this case is getting, I'm sure someone out there with disposable income would be more than happy to even fund the operation of digging up what's in that pool and even paying for it, or even a contractor to do it for free. Attention to their services. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and it's also not true. Brian Albert did not fill up his pool. However, his brother Tim Albert, Brian Albert's other brother that's not on his wall yet, he has been relatively quiet about this case.
I have so many questions.
Yes.
So the pool, is it filled with concrete or is that
At the Albert residence, it's not filled with concrete, but the rumor was that it was filled, and where it got disconnected online is a different Albert pool was recently filled with concrete.
Tim Albert?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Not Brian Albert, but Tim Albert.
Okay, so these are just like rumors that going around.
Yeah, they kind of merged together, but there is a pool that's filled. They are in the Albert family, but it is not Brian Albert's pool. It's not 34 Fairview.
Right. And Chloe is
It depends on who you ask. If you ask Brian Albert, he will tell you that Chloe has been rehomed to the state of Vermont, to a new owner all the way in Vermont. If you ask anyone online, they might tell you that Chloe is dead.
Yeah, that dog dead. I don't care what nobody say.
wild.
That dog is dead.
They had Chloe for 7 years.
That is a year time to rehome your dog.
Exactly, precisely. Tim Albert does make a social media post. It's one of those like alpha male lion, black and white photos of a lion. And on top of that lion are just words that read, I stand by my family 100%. You don't fuck with them. You fuck with them and I won't hesitate to make you the most miserable person.
What is Tim Albert?
We don't know that much about Tim Albert. He's not a cop. However, he was involved in a DUI, in a little situation. We're gonna come back to Tim Albert. Tim Albert's gonna do like the cast of characters. He's gonna be on this wall. Timmy's not escaping this wall. The pool is in his backyard. It's completely filled in, and there's new grass planted on top, which is interesting because the timing is strange.
First of all, how do we find out who built this pool? And then also, why do you think the pool
Tim Albert lives across the street from the Canton Police Department. Tim Albert lives with the senior Alberts, with their parents. Yeah, and he lives in my house, and that pool, people have taken pictures of that pool. People have been watching the Albert family for a really long time. There's actually one person that we're going to get into in the next episode. He's been like doing a lot of breaking coverage for this case, but he was one of, I believe he was the first person to publicly state, and there were pictures provided, so it's not like he's just making things up, like this is very real. In front of Tim Albert's house, people are taking pictures, you see the pool. And then
Look,
you see
Turtle
it,
Boy?
patches, it's all grassed up.
Oh yeah,
On
she's
top
talking
of
about
that,
Turtle
the
Boy.
fenced backyard looks like it's been opened up because whatever equipment they needed for concrete, it doesn't look like it had fit. So they opened up the gate and the door is now bigger. I don't know why someone would fill in a pool. I understand that maybe maintenance for a pool could be quite costly, but when you own a home, you try to maintain it.
But the 90s, what was the deal after the case?
Yes.
Recent. So bizarre. And it's not cheap. The concrete was expensive.
So expensive. Yes, so expensive. And I actually think it'd be more expensive to do that.
Yeah, how much it costs just to fill up a pool?
Even just to lay patches of grass on top these days,
Right.
patches of grass have been expensive. Don't ask me how I know.
It's so weird.
Weird. The strange part of all of this, though, is that the Zillow listing for the main Albert residence just was there here. It states, have you been looking for a great house in a perfect neighborhood? Well, here it is. The home boasts a completely finished basement with a family room and exercise room. But how's this finished when the flooring is just a random puzzle of unfinished plywood that doesn't even match? I would hardly call that finished. It's probably the second worst thing that you can find on the flooring of someone's basement. And the worst thing would be blood. And that is where the pool comes in. Because there's the unanswered question. So let's say hypothetically the Alberts were to rip up the basement flooring because maybe there was some random dark liquidy substance that they didn't want on there. Where would they get rid of these massive planks of flooring? Would they just trash it? Or would they, I don't know, put it inside a giant hole in the ground that used to be filled with water and then fill that up with concrete and throw patches of grass on top of it to make it disappear? That is the medicine theory. However, that still does not explain a lot of things in this case. If this theory is true, that would mean that Karen Reed has nothing to do with John McKee's death. But then how would you explain all the tiny pieces of her taillight that were found on the Albert property near John's body?
Okay, so you're saying that her tail light is next to John's body?
Yeah, there's just taillights everywhere on the front property.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
His body, like,
There are microscopic fragments of the taillight embedded in his clothing, but just take everything with a grain of salt.
oh, gonna be done.
There are a group of people out there that believe that Karen Reed is 1,000% guilty. They argue Karen Reed is guilty. She's also the one that found him. Furthermore, she's clearly an unstable, dishonest person. She's probably afraid that her cheating would be discovered that night from Brian Higgins and bursted into another one of her unpredictable rages before John had the opportunity to go into that house. Yes, the police were shady. I simply don't think that they wanted their personal lives unearthed and affecting their career. I don't like shady cops as much as the next guy. These guys didn't frame her. Maybe they used corrupt tactics to make sure she was found guilty, but at the end of the day, she's guilty. Which I will say, anything that means, quote, maybe they used corrupt tactics to make sure she's found guilty should be a massive red alarm, but I digress. There are people that hate Karen Reed. Some argue, it's not even that I hate her. Do I think she did it? Yeah. Did that mean that she meant to do it, or she was aware that she did it based off of her intoxication? No. Do I think that this was also the worst police work riddled with conflicts of interest? Also, yes. Others say it's crazy to me how in casual conversation police corruption is a very rational idea, but in court police corruption is irrational and absurd and it's crazy. So people are very and amongst the divided group of the ones that do think Karen Reed did it are obviously the McAlberts, but also John McKee's own family and friends. One of John's childhood friends says, the defense theory has so many problems. If you're going to suggest that people in the house are part of a conspiracy and it was a grand plan, why would you put Johnny's body still alive, mind you, on your front lawn? There are a set of train tracks behind their house, behind the Albert residence. That's a better place. They're just saying it doesn't make any sense. They say nothing points to anything and anyone other than John O'Keefe wanted to be a police officer because his grandfather was one. He told everybody he wanted to be one of the good ones. His family say, while other people were trying to figure out where they belonged in the world, he knew he wanted to be a cop. His grandfather's a cop. It was kind of in his DNA. There was never an ounce of fear with that job from him. We grew up in Braintree, which is middle class suburb, heavy Irish, heavy Italian, and John was both. A friend of John says that she met him decades ago, and she says, I remember I asked him what he did for a living, and he was in the police academy. I kind of made a joke like, oh, police officer, and he said, no, I'm the good kind. I want to be a cop because my grandfather was a cop. Side note, his grandfather's badge was 490. John requested that exact badge number, but because he was retired, he just added a 2, so his was 2490. 9 years prior to John being found deceased, his older sister, Kristen Furbush, passed away with a brain tumor. She left behind a daughter and a son, and it said that John was incredibly devastated. They were really, really close. And John starts making all these plans with his brother-in-law, Stephen. He's like, I'm going to move in. I'm going to help you raise these kids, my niece and my nephew, because my sister is gone, and these are her children. But before John can even move in, just 2 months after John's sister passes away, Stephen, his brother-in-law, passes away from a heart attack. So the kids, they end up losing both parents in the span of 2 months. John's friend says, it wasn't even a thought. John was like, I'm taking the kids. He said, I think my sister would like it. I think she'd be proud of me. I'm super close to the kids anyway, and I want to do this. He goes from being a single guy, a cop, to now being this uncle/dad, which, side note, the Boston Police Force even let him work a desk role so that he could have more stable hours to help take care of the kids. Everyone in Canton seemed to know what he was doing. Everybody wants to help. But it's also, I imagine, kind of hard to date. We've got 2 kids. Now all of your new friends. That's how he gets close with Jen McKay and Carrie Roberts, because they have kids that are friends with his niece and nephew. Suddenly, he's like a soccer dad. And you've got all these now parents that are most likely married with children. You're a single dad/uncle. You're in a very specific situation. That's not to say that John wasn't dating. It's that he had a lot of goals, but not a lot of serious relationships. So during the pandemic, John reaches out to a few of his ex-girlfriends. I don't know if he's sending a mass email or missing message where he's just like everyone bored from the lockdowns, but he reaches out to the community. They dated back in 2005. Karen says that she met John O'Keefe at a birthday party, and she says, he was handsome, he was sweet, and I mean, I was 24, so that was about the criteria at the time. From all accounts, it seems like they had accused of a romance. Karen went to Ireland to work, and now she's back in town for the lockdowns. She gets a Facebook message from John that reads, hey, blast from the past, how are things? Karen says, I didn't answer it right away because I saw a picture of him with a bunch of kids, and I thought, oh, he looks like he's married and he's got kids. And then I ended up reaching back out to him, and I know the backstory of where those kids came from, and I knew that John loved his sister more than anyone or anything, and he loved those kids. I didn't really aspire to have kids, but I cared about John's kids. Karen's got her own house about 20 minutes from Canton, so she would drive and stay with John maybe 3 to 4 times a week. Now, side note, Karen teaches finance. She's an asset manager, and at night she teaches university kids about, I think, capital gains. And she works from home. So John's niece and nephew, they also have to do remote learning. John's a cop. He doesn't have the ability to work from home. So most of the days, Karen would go to John's house, work from home, and then give the kids lunch, take care of them while John's not home because he's a cop. And then every day she's working from home, she's like a second parental figure. She says, I've never been married. I don't have kids. I don't envision myself having like a white picket fence bullshit. Yeah. And when it comes to marriage, she says, I would have considered it strongly for John, but it's not ever something that I could aspire to do. Some people are going to say goals. Other people say it's very bleak, which to give you some context to that.
Let's keep a lot of small towns.
Yeah.
Right?
I will say Karen is a very headstrong woman. There are a lot of netizens who think that many of these mothers were very jealous of Karen. Because Karen is cool. She's a single woman. She doesn't really care to have a traditional family and a traditional house and be a with the boys, like she'll drink a beer.
She sounds outspoken too, did she?
Very outspoken. But Karen has recently been diagnosed with Crohn's disease. She also does have MS, which Jen McCabe also has. But before she gets that message from John on Facebook during the pandemic, she had gone through 10 surgeries within an 18-month period.
Damn.
So I can see how she doesn't care about the right to get that bullshit. She's just trying to get through these obstacles. It's been reported that John and Karen bond over the fact that, yeah, maybe life has not been going according to plan for either of us. They start dating. Two sisters are called to testify during Karen Reed's first trial. Laura Sullivan and Marietta Sullivan. They are the two sisters that were present on the New Year's Eve trip that Karen told Brian Higgins about. Brian Higgins, remember? He was like, did they bang? Question mark.
And I said, did they bang? Question mark.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Those were the women, one of them
One of them.
was flirting with had a thing with
Everybody has
John.
an opinion about what happened in Aruba. I can't find a single fact or story that everyone in the small town of Canton is like, you know what? That's what happened. I don't know why everybody needs to have a different opinion about every single event, but that's the case with Aruba.
And that happened in like 2021.
No, this happened recently. So just 29 days before John's passing, they go to Aruba. They go to Aruba 29 days before John's passing, and they had John was there, Karen was there, the kids were there, and there were including small town friends that were there. 60 people ended up going. How do they all know each other? Well, John's best friend slash partner in the Boston police force was a guy named Pat. He was the father of Laura Sullivan's child. So John's Boston cop partner is Pat. Pat and Laura Sullivan are dating, and she ends up getting pregnant with his child. But before she even gives birth, Pat ends up suffering. And this was like 8 years before Aruba. Now John was Laura's child's godfather. He's very involved in the child's life. Laura testifies he was the first person in my delivery room after I gave birth. He was a constant connection to Pat because they were best friends. He was always just making sure that my son was taken care of in the sense of being there to tell him stories about his relationship with Pat. So now 8 years later, John, Karen, the kids are going to this Aruba trip, and Karen asks for 2 rooms. Karen wants her own bathroom. She wants her own space. The prosecutors are going to make it look like, see, Karen is so needy. Karen is so crazy. She's just doing too much. But in reality, I mean, she's got Crohn's disease. She has a lot of difficulties using the restroom. I think likely due to her medical condition, she just wants her own space. Their rooms are not directly in front of each other because it's just hard. They're on opposite ends of this hotel.
When you say 2 rooms, are you saying Karen one room, John and the 2 niece one room?
One niece, one nephew. Yes. So John and the kids are going to be in one room. Karen's going to have her own room. But the whole trip in Aruba, Karen's taking care of the kids.
I don't think that's bad. Like, there's,
Not bad.
otherwise there's 4 people and she needs her own space.
Exactly. So they end up on opposite ends of this pretty small hotel. I mean, it's fine. Laura says this was her first time meeting Karen. And she just remembers Karen walking up to her, giving her a big hug, smiling, that she's heard so much about her. And it is so strange. I do think a lot of netizens have some negative opinions about the Sullivan sisters. I wouldn't go as far to say that because we don't know really anything about the Sullivan sisters. I will say that it is very interesting how the prosecution keeps calling all these witnesses to the stand, and they all inadvertently make Karen look better. Because it's also the way they say it. The Sullivan sisters are like, yeah, it was my first time meeting her. She came up to me, gave me a big hug.
She came out, she gave me a big hug, said it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you, I recognized you from pictures.
It almost seems like they're trying to make it sound neutral, but it sounds positive. It's a friend's birthday that night, so the group of them, they go out to dinner, and Laura's asked what happens there. Again, everyone's assuming something bad is going to happen, but she says,
Karen had paid the bill prior to us receiving it.
and what, if any, reaction did you or anyone have in that instance?
And the entire table was kind of taken aback, you know, said it wasn't necessary, wanted to Venmo or give cash or something along those lines, and she declined, saying that she was honored to be there and wanted to pay for it.
A lot of netizens thought, again, this part was weird because some say it's giving human friend energy. The way that it's said, people have been saying that. I mean, to be fair, they are testifying at the expect them to do, to just like smile and giggle through it? I don't know. I mean, maybe I would because I'm so nervous, but it seems like they're just trying to be as neutral as possible. But a lot of people are saying, that sounds like an amazing person question. Why are they even bringing this up? However, Laura's little sister, Marietta, not nearly as good of a first impression of Karen Reed. She gets up at the stand, and Marietta says that she ends up flying into Aruba a little later than her sister. And when she first arrives at the hotel, she's busy saying hi to everybody. I mean, clearly she knows John. That's her nephew's godfather. Marietta says he's similar to a big brother to me.
He was similar to a big brother to me. He was somebody who was there for my sister during her darkest times. So I really respected him for that. But yeah, he was a big brother and a family friend.
She ends up running into him in the lobby the first night after dinner. And she says that John O'Keefe is stumbling into the lobby. She had just gotten out of the elevator. John O'Keefe is alone. And Marietta says,
My initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" But yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
she says that she goes up to him and gives him a hug. She says that he was exhausted, looking above me. We never made eye contact. It was like he was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, where are you going? Assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet all of us. So I just wanted to for that. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a big room to far right. And I said, well, you should go that way. And I stepped back and I guided him toward the area that he was going. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar where I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks. So I turned around to go back in.
As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the was that?" As I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister." I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up, and she very loudly told me to go myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, you too," and walked away.
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. She was very loud. She was very energetically screaming at me to go myself. She was waving with her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down. And after I said, yeah, you too, I went out to the pool bar and I didn't see much after that. I went straight to my sister Laura and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend? And she looked at me and said, Karen? And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks. Laura, Marietta's sister, says that she wants to talk to John about the whole thing. So it seems like obviously Laura and John are closer.
So Laura wants to talk about her sister.
Yeah, what happened? And she says, quote, I said, what's going on? And he said, nothing. I said, did Etta, Marietta, and Karen have words? He said, I don't know. And he said, well, that's not what Marietta said. And I asked him if everything was okay. And at the time, his phone was lighting up, and it looked like calls, text messages. And I said, Karen on his phone. I asked him if he needed to take it, and he said, yeah, she's crazy. I gotta take care of this. Laura says throughout the entire trip, he just didn't seem like himself. She says, quote, he seemed distant.
I asked him if he was okay, and he kind of just, shrugged it off. And I said, are you happy? He kind of just rolled his eyes and shrugged it off. I said, well, something along the lines of life is too short to not be happy. And he goes, well, Laura, it is what it is. And I did ask him if he wanted to talk about it. Did you want to talk about it? And he said, not really.
Eventually, Laura says that John tells her, well, apparently I made out with your sister the other night, according to Karen. Side note, it has been debated whether or not they did make out. Both the sisters kind of state that they never made out. Some netizens feel like they have mean girl energy, and if Marietta did kiss John, she could have easily said no. Additionally, she had a boyfriend that night, or that time, so she could have lied.
Wait, this is all from, how Karen was telling Brian Keating that John was making out with her. If the sisters are saying that was the incident, just walking out, exchanging words, what Karen thought, either thinking something happened or whatever, that's it. That was all the sisters are saying.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, some say the way that Marietta describes hugging John, it feels very intimate. To notice that he's like looking above her while they're hugging, it just, I don't know, some people, the way that she says that she testifies sounds more intimate. People have been really dissecting it. Either way, Karen ends up believing that they did kiss at some point, and then she ends up believing that she believed it wrong. Another thing to note that could indicate why Karen was so angry is Karen was in the hotel room taking care of the niece and nephew while John was out getting drunk. So that might have led her to believe that he was out doing something that he shouldn't have been doing. And later, Karen pulled Laura aside and she says, "Hey, I'm sorry. I thought I saw something that I didn't, and I would like to pay for some of your sister's room."
Really?
Yeah, Laura testifies, "I said it's absolutely not necessary, just an apology will do."
Wow.
The prosecutor asks her, did she persist in wanting to pay for that room? She did.
And she just said, I will apologize, but something along the lines of, I want to pay for some of her room. Can I just have a room number? I don't remember if I gave her the room number or not. I don't really know.
Obviously, this Aruba incident was a big deal for Karen. She was texting ATF Brian about it, and she sounds really hurt, which is why medicines are confused why this sister was called to testify, and they have no connection with the alleged crime, the alleged charges. Additionally, some medicines feel like it actually validated Karen's side more, but nevertheless, that was beginning of 2022. 28 days later, John O'Keefe and Karen, they get into another fight. The morning of January 28th. Technically the day that Karen and John, they start arguing, and it's mainly because Karen took John's niece to Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast. Karen says, "He thought I spoiled them. I was miffed because it was just in the essence of saving time. I would say the arguments that we've had, this was probably one of the unfair ones, so I got my back up more than I normally did." And it sounds kind of like an unbelievable fight. But a close friend of John's does state that John would complain about Karen, and what would he complain about? Quote, "I did hear him complain about when Karen would buy very nice things for the kids. He wouldn't like that, stuff like that.
Like 5 years, I think.
Or took the kids to get their nails done or something like that."
Huh.
Which a lot of netizens again are saying, wait, how is this helping the Commonwealth
Yeah,
case?
yeah.
Because, so we're just mad that Karen has financial resources and she's using them on not even her own kids?
Absolutely.
There's a text from Karen Reed to John O'Keefe read, January 28th, 2022, 9:49 a.m. "You really hurt me this time." John responds, "I'm sorry, this has been an issue with me for 8 years. It physically hurts me to see everyone else in their lives, his lives, do things for them, and I'm forced to always be that guy." Which, while I can see how frustrating that is for John, just on a human level, a lot of netizens also argue, but that's not Karen's fault, because Karen is not their parent, is not their guardian, is not their parental figure. And if anything, she's being nice to the kids. In fact, a lot of people say that the kids loved Karen, and that actually caused a lot of strain in their relationship. Karen responds, "I am not the same as everyone else. Most of the time I try to do what is healthy and smart for them. More importantly, I try to support you in what you need. You just lashed out at me and said terrible things. I don't know how you've gotten to this point with me when I'm just trying my hardest. You made your point and you continue to beat me down. I have a lot going on too. Physically, I'm falling apart and trying to get answers and help. I'm just your girlfriend. I'm not a perfect parent. I'm trying very hard and sometimes treat them nothing like I used to." So a lot of people think it indicates that maybe prior she would make a lot of meals that were maybe healthier. John responds, "I know, I'm sorry for lashing out. I'm just hurting and struggling daily with them. Always feel like I'm failing at this parenting thing. I wasn't built for this." Karen responds, the niece is redacted, "Isn't perfect, but everything wonderful about her is because of you. I know she's her mother's daughter, but she wouldn't be so bright and successful if she lived with anyone else."
These are the point.
Yeah. Karen's texting him not to lose faith in the kids or himself. And she says, "Life can pick you up sometimes. Please be happy with them and put away your frustrations for the rest of the day and just be so proud of yourself, JJ." But later in the day, I think Karen has some time to stew about it. She thinks about it a little bit and she responds, "I feel pretty shitty about how this morning went down. I know you said sorry, but it really stunk, especially when I've been trying pretty hard lately. I feel like a loser turning around, just coming back over to the house after everything was said." John responds, "Not sure what else you want me to do. I said I'm sorry and I was out of line. If you prefer to stay home, I totally get it. Things in my own life have been difficult too, you know. I know. Text messages, some netizens don't think it puts John O'Keefe in the best light either. I guess he does consistently brush her off when she wants to talk about how hard she's trying, and she does have her own struggles as well. And other times when she's trying to communicate, he's very standoffish. And I think a lot of people think that adds to the statement that Jen McKay said, which is that all the women, these little soccer PTA mom groups, think that Karen Reed is just a glorified babysitter. Karen says, "Tell me if you're interested in someone else. I can't think of any other reason you've been like this." Nope, things haven't been great between us for a while. Ever consider that? Kids are here, I'm not in the mood to talk. So you're not into it anymore? That's fine, but I don't want to keep trying and you keep treating me like this. I'm trying to kiss and hug you this morning and you whack me in the face with a pillow. He says, sick of always arguing and fighting. It's been weekly for several months now, so yeah, I'm not as quick to jump back into being lovey-dovey as you apparently. It appears that Karen tries to get in contact with him by calling him nonstop. I don't know what nonstop means, but he says, OMG, stop calling. I've explained it a few times already. I'm not doing it again. So you're not into this anymore? Not into fighting all the time, correct? If you tell me you're interested in someone else, you will never hear from me again. You can have all the space in the world. He just responds in caps, I'm not answering, stop calling. She texts him, I'm gonna grab a drink in a bit.
I'll be
He
right
answer. John responds, no Karen, not sure why you need to announce that you're grabbing a drink, but have fun. She says, see if you want to meet me later. Again, a lot of people say that these texts give the impression that Karen just really wanted attention from John, and that could explain why she was reaching out to Brian Haha Higgins. It seems like she just wanted John to show her some sort of, I mean, the logic is coherent. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. She later texts John to keep frustrated. I've been dealing with my own personal crisis over things that I have zero control over. I'd like to lean on you too sometimes. Instead, I just hear everything I've done wrong. She also states that she doesn't want to go meet him at the house right now because she feels like the second she walks in, the niece and nephew are going to get chatty with her, and quote, that's going to irritate me. So again, which further, I mean, at this point in the text message, she doesn't prove the theory.
She's saying that interest apparently being difficult, that's an irritation.
I don't think it's just the fact that they're probably friendly with Karen Reed. It's the fact that they probably think that John O'Keefe is the bad guy, the bad cop. And she's the fun woman. And they're gonna be like, you're fun, unlike JJ. Maybe they say stuff like that, I don't know. You know? And so, I mean, there was another incident where Karen said that the kids had gone on vacation with John O'Keefe's parents. When they get back, they hugged Karen first. And that was kind of the situation in their relationship. I think that maybe some of the things you're saying could also add to the dynamic of the fact that these are not his kids. If they were his kids, he'd probably be a lot happier that maybe his kids even like his partner more than they like him. Because that's what teenagers do. But I think it's the fact that he was also their uncle, their fun uncle for the longest time. And then now he's, I don't know, right? But Karen states that John would get a little upset over things like this. Side note, in the text messages, there are conversations about a water heater that was not working at Karen's house. And it's interesting because, again, when you read these messages, some people interpret as, God, Karen Reed is so annoying, she's so needy, so high maintenance. Others think John is just kind of mean towards her and not really showing her basic appreciation. The only reason he invites her to see if McCarthy's that night is because he tells her straight up his friend is going home, so he needs a ride, essentially. And again, this does not really help the prosecution. In fact, it just shows that Karen Reed wants a healthy relationship. If she's not getting it, she would just rather John tell her and then move on. That's the vibe. And it also seems like she likes him more than he likes her, which would mean that her outburst of believing that he's cheating on her doesn't seem so far left field. One that is in common themes. To be honest, I expected the text to be really bad. Thus far, I just see a lot of standard couple bullshit. Karen says this fight was pretty rough. She ends up calling her dad that day before going to see at McCarthy's and then Watercolor and then 34th there because she's at her house. And she just says, my father just gently said to me, Karen, why don't you stay home tonight? It's going to snow anyway. But I didn't. And she says, Dad, if I had listened to you, none of this would have happened. Because now John is being the Good Samaritan Hospital, and the likelihood of him surviving is very slim. His body temperature is at 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 26.7 degrees Celsius, which means multiple organs are already shutting down. A paramedic does mention when someone's hypothermic and in cardiac arrest, we can't put another test on until they've been warmed up. A lot of times with hypothermic patients, they can appear to be dead when they're actually still alive. So there have been instances where people have woken up in wards that were hypothermic and when their bodies warmed up a little bit. So we have to be very cautious, very careful about treating them as much as we can. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. There is a fatal laceration to the back of John O'Keefe's head that has caused multiple skull fractures and bleeding in the brain. John O'Keefe low pass in the hospital, while Karen is 2 doors down on the same floor losing her mind. Karen gets section 12 in that same hospital. She says while at the scene, she calls her mom, she calls her dad, her brother, nobody's answering, she's freaking out. Eventually her dad calls her back, and in this emotional, distraught state, Karen tells her dad she does not want to exist anymore. He is so nervous for his daughter, he calls the police to make sure that they're making sure she's not trying to do anything.
Like the Texas Police Department?
Yes, and they section 12 her because, you know, his trust in the police was very high at this point.
Could you explain Section 12 for
It's like a psych evaluation. So she's forced to go to the hospital, go through a mental evaluation to make sure that she's not going to self-exit and be a harm to herself and or to other people. She ends up 2 doors down from John. John's parents are driven to the hospital by Carrie Roberts. So after leaving the scene, she actually drives back to the scene. It's very complicated. He and Karen leave 34 Fairview together. And then the officer calls Carrie Roberts and is like, you gotta bring Karen back because we got section 12 her. So then she drives back to 34 Fairview. Karen gets ambulance to the hospital, section 12. Carrie Roberts then goes to pick up John O'Keefe's mom and dad, Peggy, and they drive to the hospital. And Peggy O'Keefe, John's mother, says, we started walking down the corridor of the hospital, and as I'm walking down, I hear Karen Reed yell, Peg, is he dead? Is he dead? Peg, is he dead? And I just kept walking, and then I asked, I don't know if it was a nurse or a worker, just asked, what is she doing here? And she said, oh, she's being psych evaluated. To which Peggy is later asked by Prosecutor Brennan, Special Prosecutor Brennan, right here.
he's the president of the trial too?
Yes, and he's a special prosecutor, so he's not a DA. He's brought in specifically for this case, and he paid like $500,000. Sharper than Lally, I will say, but he's still kind of, his nickname online is Spanky. Spanky. His name is Hank.
Spanky.
Yeah, they call him Spanky.
That's it, just because it's the name?
I think it's Special Prosecutor,
Ah.
and I think it's supposed to be not the nicest nickname.
Got it.
Okay. To which Peggy was asked later by Spanky. So when she was yelling, could you describe her mood, her demeanor? Was she animated? She was loud. I don't know. She was just loud as she was saying it. Paul O'Keefe, John's brother, will also later testify that Karen screamed at him too. To which Paul, at this point, blows Karen a kiss and walks off with his family. This blowing of the kiss has been interpreted in drastically different ways depending on the netizen. Some people think that it's just him trying to show her love in a very difficult situation where everything is falling apart. Others say it's kind of weird. You know, I don't know. Now, a firefighter later testifies that it appeared to him that Karen was showing signs consistent of having gone through a traumatic experience, rapid, repetitive speech, and it's been said that she was freaking out about how she was going to take care of the kids. So she might have felt some sort of responsibility there. Karen's brother says when Karen finds out that John is gone, she does lose it for a little bit, but within a short period of time, she finds a way out. She says, by the time I finally get out of the hospital, right before noon, I said, Dad, I want to go see the kids. So Karen, her dad, and her brother, they all drive to John O'Keefe's house, where John's parents, John's father, his niece and nephew were all there. And Karen says, I hugged his dad and his niece, greeted his brother and his mother. I knew they had just identified the body, and I said, Paul, which is John's brother, Paul, what did he look like? What happened? And he said, my brother looks like he went 5 rounds with Tyson. Looks like he got beat up. Paul would later say about looking at his brother, he was pretty banged up. His eyes had swelled up. He had a breathing tube in, or a mask anyway. Blood coming down his nose, blood coming down his mouth. What really stood out to me were the eyes. It was almost as if there were ping pong balls under his eyelids. They were that swollen. However, Karen states John's mom clearly doesn't agree. She claims John's mom, quote, and his mother leaned over the kitchen island and said to me, I think he looks like he got hit by a car. I think he looks like he got hit by a car. And I'm like, wait a minute, were you both looking at the same body? That's what Karen says. Karen eventually goes upstairs to grab her things, and she knew immediately the whole thing felt off. That's why she doesn't end up staying a long time. Karen's dad and brother are also there, and Karen's brother says after a couple of minutes, John's brother gets a phone call. He leaves the room, and when he comes back, the way he looked at my sister, it was like time stopped. Oxygen left that room at that point, and there was some serious looks of guilt being thrown at Karen. Subsequently, at my father and I as well. Karen says, I could read the room. I could tell that I wasn't wanted there. She really was not.
Yeah.
Peggy O'Keefe testifies.
Yeah, she could tell.
then he said, do you mind if we go upstairs and get a couple of our things? Which I never should have let them go up there, but at the time, I really didn't have anybody else to help me keep them down in the kitchen. So I don't know what they got up there, what they did up there.
Peggy saying, I shouldn't have let Karen upstairs that day. Peggy also said that she doesn't remember ever saying anything to Karen along the lines of accusing her of hitting him with her car, but I don't know. One of John's closest friends also states, we had no details at this point. I immediately called Johnny's brother, Paul, and Paul started to fill in some of the gaps. Everyone liked Karen, and everything changed on the morning of the 29th. And everyone thought,
Yes.
if she did this, she's going to be
It
held responsible
changed.
for it. And at this point, we didn't necessarily think that Karen hit him on purpose. We just know that something happened, she hit him, and she left. One of John's friends compares it to Karen needs to fall on the sword if this is what she did. They just want her to admit it, show remorse, and they can move on. But as the trial goes on, they change their minds, and they say, quote, this is quite literally a murder carnival, and it's as though Karen is the happiest murder defendant in America, walking a red carpet on her way to her own murder trial.
That's weird. What changed?
They truly believe that Karen did it, and they think that all these conspiracies are just heinous conspiracies crafted by their defense to...
Karen did it on accident at first.
And then they're like, if she's trying this hard to make up all these, quote, lies and conspiracies and brainwash the media, then that means that she might have done it on purpose. And there are things that maybe they just can't justify. Like the fact that a tiny piece of John O'Keefe's hair is found on the bumper of Karen Reed's car. Now, some argue, yeah, well, that's not really that abnormal. I mean, John O'Keefe, like, Karen Reed would park her car in John O'Keefe's garage. This is not completely unheard of. Other people should already be alarmed. Because at this point, her car has been driven around a blizzard, it's been towed from police station to a house, it's towed everywhere, and people are confused. Quote, you're gonna tell me a hair stays on the bumper throughout the entire drive, 60 miles back and forth through a blizzard, and you're gonna find a tiny hair on the bumper? That doesn't make sense. Other things that don't make sense, well, you've got Michael Proctor. To have a stellar performance review for work is a very hard endeavor. If you've never had a bad mark on your employee performance review in 12 years, you might as well brag about it too. Say, quote, I've never had a single complaint. I've never been the subject of any disciplinary actions. All my employee evaluations are either outstanding or excellent. But sir, quick clip, we know exactly what you've done. Trooper Proctor is up on the witness stand, and for my audio listeners, he looks like a freshly boiled egg. They're not really a black.
Yeah, he does. That head do look like a damn egg.
And one of the lead investigators on the case of the death of John O'Keefe.
Look like
He's
a
sitting
bootleg
at the
Mr.
witness
Queen.
stand, looking like a defendant. I mean, he might as well be. He's fighting for his life. He tries to win the jury over with the fact that he's been doing this job for 10 years. And everyone's like, that's actually terrifying. 5 years with the homicide unit. Again, we're scared. Several homicide schools he's attended. That's what he calls them, homicide schools. He also has experience working in narcotics. A lot of people are like, lots of cops with access to drugs. He was on a shift when the call comes in that there was a male party discovered on the snow outside of a residence. That's what he says he was told. He wasn't told anything else. Canton police, these three right here, the Canton clowns, they quickly fill him in that it's a Boston cop, 10% survival rate. That's what Proctor says that he's told. And the first stop Proctor says he's going to make is going to the woman that called 911, Jen McCabe. He drives over to Jennifer McCabe's house where Jen McCabe is there, her husband Matt McCabe is there, and then also her brother-in-law, fellow Boston cop, the man whose lawn John O'Keefe was found, Brian Albert, he is also at Jen McCabe's house.
This is 17. First name, 29.
Yeah, the 29th. So the Canton cops, they come out to 34th Fairview. They're actually the first ones to talk to Jennifer McCabe. Officer Lane Diggs, he goes inside the house, and he's talking to Jennifer McCabe. Gallagher, this one, also goes inside the house, and he's talking to Jennifer McCabe. And he's talking to Brian Albert. And then they're like, you know what, we gotta recuse ourselves. Because that's what Chief Berkowitz wants. He says, we can't, because Kevin Albert has been with us for 18 years, body count on Brian Albert's lawn. We gotta recuse ourselves. Do they really recuse themselves? Not really. So then the Canton clowns, these three, okay, they go and they talk to the troopers that are taking over. the trooper trolls, okay? So they go to the trolls, and the trolls are like, okay, what's going on? Just give us the details, so we don't have to do our job. They say, you should probably talk to Jennifer McKay. That is where Trooper Proctor goes.
So he pulled up in Jen McKay's house, and Brian Aldridge now at Jen McKay's house.
Yes,
They shifted their meeting from Brian's house to Jen McKay's house.
yes. Ryan is like, listen, I went to Jen's house because she's my sister-in-law. She was going through an awful time that morning, because we all were, and I wanted to be there to comfort her if she needed anything, because we were close. I didn't want her to feel like this was too much for her to handle. A few things about that. The man was found on your lawn, off of your wife's lawn. Maybe you should worry about your own wife. A lot of people think affair theories, swinger theory, affair theory. Other people think that's a nice excuse to be like, I wanted to make sure that she doesn't pick up. Some people think, what if it was a coincidence? What if he was just checking in on Jen? And then Trooper Proctor shows up. Well, during cross-examination, Jackson asks Brian, isn't it true that you knew, or at least you believed, that an interview with Jen McCabe as part of an official police investigation was going to occur at her house? Yes. You were not asked by the police to join her, correct? No.
Isn't it true that you knew that notified? Or at least you believe that an interview with McCabe as part of an official police investigation was going to occur at her house?
Yes.
You were not asked by the police to join her, correct?
No.
Proctor does not think that this is weird at all in the slightest. I'm not sure he knows how to do that. Think, that is. I don't think he thinks at all. To him, this is 3 birds, 1 stone. Let's interview Jen, Matt, and Brian all at once. Because technically, these are the last 3 people to see John O'Keefe alive, whether that be at Fairview, whether that be at the Waterfall Bar. These are extremely important witnesses, and I believe that anyone who has at least seen 1 documentary and maybe 1 episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine would have better investigative skills than the Trooper Trolls. They interview the 3 with no audio, no body cam, nothing. Barely any notes. Michael Proctor is asked by ABC, does it change the nature of the investigation when you know the deceased is a cop?
Does it change the nature of the investigation when you know that the deceased is a cop? No, it's a little short.
Because again, when you're dealing with a police officer, a cop that has died, I mean, the officers are usually very enthusiastic about solving that case. But no notes, no audio, just leaving it. He says no, it doesn't change anything that the deceased is a police officer. He says nor should it. I mean, there is a little more emotion involved towards the deceased, which makes sense. And maybe that justifies why he starts looking through deceased officers' girlfriend's phone for nudes. You're like, yeah, I'm extra sad because the deceased is one of me. We're all law enforcement. We face the same battles every day. We relate to each other.
So what happened immediately after he called Karen to the station? He called with her phone.
Later they go to Karen's house, or Karen's dad's house. They tow her car, they seize her phone, and then he starts immediately looking for nudes. But he's telling the deceased, I was a little more emotional because the deceased was a cop. And everyone's like, oh, so you're so emotional about the deceased being a fellow officer of the law that you're like, you know what? Just to like spit on his grave, I'm gonna look for his girlfriend's naked photos.
No news so far.
No news.
Douchebag.
Correct.
Douchebag.
Those messages were exactly.
The trooper trolls. This one specifically, Lieutenant.
Let's say there are photos. You was just sharing photos.
Yes, because he said no nudes so far, and one of the other troopers that's not on this log yet, he thumbs down the message as in, like, disappointed. Like, darn. Proctor's sheer shamelessness makes my head spin. On the stand, Proctor has to read his messages out loud. He tries to read them in the most casual tone, not unlike Brian Haha Higgins.
I said, ha ha, how did you get my digits? Ha ha, I'm shy. And I said, ha ha. I said, ha ha. I said, ha ha again.
And he's just like trying to act as if he's reading off the Cheesecake Factory menu, but I don't think that there isn't any way in which he can cadence delivery his way out of these words that he texted. He reads, and this is in reference to him talking to his high school buddies when he's not investigating the homeowner.
High school buddies. That's a friend.
Yeah, these are friends. So he's got multiple group chats.
Okay, so these are civilians.
Yes.
That's asking Proctor about this case
on
Investigation.
Yes. He writes, from all accounts, he, aka Brian Albert, didn't do anything wrong. She's a whack job, C-U-N-T.
From all accounts, he didn't do anything wrong. She's a whack job.
Auntie Beth stops him. Auntie Beth says,
So don't spell it. So these are your words, Trooper Proctor?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead and say it.
Yeah, she's a maid. We Fall River accent, though. So, no ass.
Fred responds, not newsworthy.
Disrespectful.
Good, no ask. Proctor laughs in the group chat.
The friend says, this is not good.
Yeah, she has no ass.
And then he goes,
No, another friend says, good, no ask. Right, good, she's going down. No ask. And Proctor's like, haha, that was comedic gold. Proctor laughs in the group chat, which is, you're the lead investigator on this case, and a man who's found deceased outside another man's house, but you want only to investigate the girlfriend because she's a whack job. That's terrifying, but Proctor is like, no, listen. The compelling evidence against Miss Reed at this point indicated that Mr. Albert had nothing to do with Mr. O'Keefe's death. The rest of the unprofessional and regrettable comments are something I'm not proud of and shouldn't have written in a private or any kind of setting. Side note, Proctor has multiple group chats going on, all of which is a cesspool of derogatory comments being made. One, like I said, is with his high school buddies, his friends, and then another one, which is his work colleagues, including his supervisor. This one right here.
Really?
Buchanan. Proctor sends his buddies pictures of, this one is back to his high school buddies, of Karen Reed being escorted from the state police Milton barracks. His friend asks, is this chick a smoke? Nutbag, as Chief would say. Chief, maybe referencing Tully. Tully's the big boss. It's Tully, Buchanan, Proctor. Yes.
so Tully popped off, and then goes to Buchanan, and then goes down to Proctor.
Yes.
And Tully calls her a nut job?
It's alleged that he's referencing Tully.
Okay.
He could be referencing Berkowitz, but that's not his chief. But his official title is not chief.
But somebody, so one of the
Yes.
officers popped off.
He says,
I also respond with, she's got a leaky on, leaks poo
Lally asks him to explain that.
to Miss Reed's some medical conditions there. Again, unprofessional comments I should not have made. These juvenile unprofessional comments have zero impact on the facts, the evidence, and the integrity of this investigation. Like I said, these are unprofessional comments, but they absolutely do not detract from the integrity of the investigation or the facts and evidence of it.
What's crazy is I think the agreement is agreeing with Proctor. With one writing, a cops group chat with friends proves what now? Another says, just imagine all your personal messages on display. Another casualty of Karen the narcissist. Go to jail, Karen. They continue to talk about Karen Reed in Proctor's group chat if she's hot enough to get away with the crime, to which Proctor responds, zero chance she escapes. He also responds to if she's hot. He says, if you like women who fit themselves, to which the jurors vote. Again, a regrettable comment I made about Miss Reed's medical condition. Proctor's testimony is a painful series of regrettable messages. Some feminists believe that he's only started regretting them because he's been caught. Others say that the only ones with regret should be his parents, but it appears that they are standing by their son. However, the more alarming messages are the ones between Proctor and the trooper trolls. Because why are you texting your supervisor about no news yet, and why are they thumbs upping that message? Lieutenant thumbs ups that message.
So someone thumbs down,
He hasn't.
and then thumbs up.
Yeah. He also texted to that group as he's investigating this ongoing investigation where you cannot come up with your own outcome before you investigate. He said, Karen said the Albert speaker should get out of O'Keefe, left him for dead, and that's why her taillight was cracked. She's gross. Another trooper responds, oh, her. Then another trooper sends a picture of David Yannetti. Karen Reed's Boston-based attorney, the only local attorney during the first trial on her team. And Proctor responds, funny, I'm going through his R-worded client's phone.
Fine, I'm going through his retarded client's phone. So far, I hate that man, I truly am.
Talking about Yannetti.
Do they know each other?
They don't. They don't know each other at all. Proctor continues, of course, to insist that this entire investigation is completely filled to the brim, overflowing, cup runneth over from integrity, and honor. Proctor says that he has this aha moment at the hospital when he goes to see John O'Keefe's body. He is escorted by Buchanan, his supervisor. So the two trooper trolls, they go to Good Samaritan, and Proctor is like, look, John O'Keefe is missing a shoe. They only got one shoe on him. He said the only thing that jumped out to both of us was that he only had one sneaker. The reason that was important at the time is during my training and experience, and it's fairly common in a motor vehicle pedestrian incident for, if not both pieces of footwear to remain at the point of contact, but at least one. So he's saying sometimes people will get literally hit out of their shoes.
That's common.
It does seem to be common, but you have to be going at pretty high speeds. He says, I've been to pedestrian strikes where both shoes were right at the point of contact. I've seen it where the people got completely ripped out of their clothing and their clothes are at the point of contact. I don't know how true that is. That's what gives him the feeling, though. And gives Buchanan the feeling that they're on to something. That is when he decides to follow the lead. The one shoe. Jen McCabe saying that, hey, Karen said I hit him. He believes that perhaps Karen did indeed hit John O'Keefe in her car. So it's time for Trooper Proctor and Buchanan to pay Karen Reed a visit. This is the same day, January 29th, 2022. They call Karen. She's been released from the hospital. She went to John O'Keefe's house. She had that weird incident with John Stanley. She's now gone back to her dad's house. She's staying with her dad. And they don't live in Canton. They live in a place called Dighton. This is in Brent later, including a completely different jurisdiction. They show the house, the blizzard is coming down strong, so much so that when they get to Karen's dad's front door, it won't even open because the snow is piled up blocking it. So Karen is like, can you come around the garage? I can open the garage and you can come into the garage. That's where she lets them in. And both Proctor and Buchanan testify as they're passing Karen's Lexus in question. Proctor states, it's not just shattered. A significant chunk is missing from that tail light, the right rear tail light. So the passenger tail light has large pieces missing from it. Proctor says, we were very confident. We knew what had transpired, which was Karen Reed backed her vehicle into John O'Keefe. They're actually so confident that before they even get to Karen's dad's house and lay eyes on this car, potentially I could understand if they see the car, see large chunks missing, and they're like, hey, I think she ended up with the car. I could maybe see that. But they're actually so confident that even before they got to Karen's dad's house and laid eyes on this vehicle in question, they're already on the phone with Dighton police trying to find out how to get her car towed back to Canton. They put all their eggs in this basket and they're going to die on this hill whether the Easter Bunny comes to town or not. They don't care. That is when Karen's phone and her car are seized by the trooper trolls. And sure, Proctor is corrupt. But how do you explain 45 plus pieces of Karen Reed's tail light that are found in the snow?
Yeah, that was weird.
Fairview Road, in the vicinity where John O'Keefe's body is found. 40-something pieces of tail light. I mean, some are the size of a dime, others are the size of a banana, buried in the snow. I mean, the evidence that Karen Reed did it was maybe right there all along. Or was it? Back to the Canton clowns. Sergeant Good is working dispatch. He's sitting
There
at
we
the
go.
Canton Police Department all night. He's picking up the 911 calls. First call he picks up in relation to this case, Carrie Roberts. She's like, hey, my friend's girlfriend just called and is like, John O'Keefe is missing. Do you have any reports of anything? Nothing? Oh, okay, thanks. Then Jen McCabe calls and is like, hey, so there's a guy laying in the snow. He's picking up both those calls. All he does is dispatch people. But that day, he's like, I'm gonna go. Someone take over. I'm gonna head out. What? Because this is a big call, and I'm a sergeant, so I'm gonna go. So he calls in Kelly Dever. She's crazy. She's the next one. He calls in Kelly Dever. She takes over dispatch. It's a whole thing. Sergeant Good comes to the address. He calls Gallagher. Gallagher is his boss. His supervisor is Gallagher. He calls Gallagher. Gallagher ends up going to Congress. It's either suspicious or it's stupid. That's how I sum up every law enforcement decision in this case. It's either stupid or it's suspicious because nothing is ever making any sense here. I don't understand anything. He ends up going to the wrong address. And then he's like, you know what, I'm not even going to go there right now. I'm going to stop by the Canton Police Station before I head over there. So he grabs himself one of those reflective jackets because it's dark outside. He doesn't grab anything else, like an evidence bag and just a reflective jacket. He shows up at the scene. Sergeant Good had already called for another person, Officer Link, Michael Link, to show up. So now it's the Canton Brown's out of there. Okay, there's 2 other Canton officers there, but they're lower rank and they're not as pertinent to this case. We talked about them briefly in part 1 where they just talk about what they heard, what they didn't hear, and the situations. Mainly, their dash cam footage is the most important, but other than that, they don't really. Now, mind you, Gallagher is the highest ranking one at the scene, top dog at the scene. And at the scene, he says, "You gotta put up crime scene tape," but it just starts blowing in the wind because it's a blizzard. Which, in his mind, he's like, well, then we shouldn't even put up a tent because then a tent is also gonna blow away. And then also, they don't canvass the area. They don't go and speak to anybody in the nearby homes. Nothing. And he shows up when John's body is already gone. So John has been escorted to the hospital, and he shows up. And he's looking around. He tries to put up crime scene tape, so he says. It starts blowing in the wind, so he puts away the crime scene tape. And then he's like, you know what, the thought of putting up a tent did cross my mind, but then I thought it's just going to blow away. He doesn't canvass the neighborhood, nothing. He gets there late. He just asks them, hey, so where was John's body found? And they point in a general area. And this is where he just starts looking for evidence. Gallagher will later bring the troopers out to show them exactly where John O'Keefe's body was found. But he's never seen John O'Keefe's body found there.
Yeah.
So what, I mean, is that not hearsay?
Yeah.
Karen's attorney is cross-examining Gallagher, asking, so you were giving them information that you had no personal knowledge of, correct?
I had knowledge from other officers. I did not see John O'Keefe at the scene. He was transported to the hospital. That is correct, yes.
So you couldn't determine exactly how he was positioned, right?
Not precisely.
From head to toe, right?
Not precisely.
Where his arms or his hands were.
That is correct, yes.
He's a 6'2" man, correct?
I don't know.
You don't even know that?
I don't know his size now.
And the details matter in a case like this. In the investigation, the details matter. Accuracy is vital in a homicide investigation.
Correct.
So the 2 initial Canton officers, Sarah and Mulaney, I believe, they are the ones that tell John Good and Michael like where the body was. And then they tell Gallagher. Gallagher tells the troopers. The troopers will later tell the accident reconstructionists. So it's 20 layers? Yeah, 20 layers of telephone and hearsay. So if that were the case, then they wouldn't have personal knowledge of where John O'Keefe's body was either. Not to a precise location. So they're all talking about where John's body was, but none of them have seen John's body there. But they start searching the area for evidence. However, the snow is coming down hard. And Gallagher is worried that the evidence is getting covered in snow. What evidence? We don't know what we're looking for, but we're looking for something. In what area? We don't really know for sure, but in a general area. He's looking. And he says the snow is covering everything. What's everything? We don't know. Gallagher thinks that the idea of using a rake or a shovel is probably not great because he could inadvertently break something. What is something? We don't know. So the ever cautious, ever intelligent Gallagher decides that he's going to use a leaf blower to get rid
Which
of
is
snow
super
to
stupid.
uncover the evidence. He said the
Which
leaf
is
blower
stupid,
much better
stupid,
control. But the
stupid.
problem is he's got this reflective jacket from the police station. No leaf blower. Didn't think of that one, did you? So he has Sergeant Good go get a leaf blower. Why the leaf blower? Gallagher says it's a unique case. There was snow. I had never processed a scene with snow. Like, this man has worked in this area for 30 years. You never processed a single scene in Massachusetts where there was snow. I had seen a leaf blower used in the snow, and it's quite effective at being controlled. So that's why it was readily accessible. The scene was debilitating as we were on the scene with the weather. Snow was piling up, and I thought that this was the best method at the time, which people think he's crazy. He is asked by the prosecutors later, was it successful? Very. I started with a low speed and began whisking away the snow, and then I saw how it was uncovering these pink spots, which were becoming a brighter red. There's a they've got the weirdest photographic evidence of things that don't make sense.
If someone recorded him at the crime scene, but there's no like photos,
A lot of the evidence is photographed, but it's photographed in a way where you have no idea where on the lawn it's found. You just see snow and grass. So you have no idea in what area, in what vicinity. You don't even know where John's body was found, so like, really, what are we doing? We don't know anything. This could have been found on the surface of Mars. It could have been found in New York City. We don't know. I mean, obviously we know it's not, but he says, see, it removes the snow. I was removing the snow layer by layer, and right here, so you can see it exposing the cocktail glass. You're going to see red spots appear as I remove it layer by layer. Those pink spots start to turn to be dark red spots, as you can see. We can control it. We were You know, we were concerned, but it worked. He verifies that those pink spots to be coagulated blood, which I would imagine, if an officer is called out to the scene of a potential death and there is blood, the bare minimum is
I'll be right
blood,
back.
blood. But Gallagher proudly says, so out of an abundance of caution, I decided that blood was something we may want to collect. But Gallagher only has his reflective jacket, and now he's over how he want to collect his blood samples. They run across the street to another house. Tom Keller is the neighbor right across the street. He's another Canton cop. In fact, he's only second in command after Chief Berkowitz. He's the deputy of the Canton Police Department. He is Gallagher's boss.
You just knew, oh, that's Tom's house right there. Let's go.
Let's go there. They run to his house. They say, hey, we saw some blood, and out of an abundance of caution, we may want to collect the blood. They go back to 34th Fairview with a stack of red Solo cups, plastic cups that you typically drink beer out of. Gallagher says that his genius thought behind this was they were plastic. They weren't going to leak. They weren't going to get soggy. They were large. I needed a small sample. My thought was because it was frozen and coagulated that we could collect it, transport it, and transfer it to the crime lab, who could extract the DNA however they saw best fit. He's asked later by Attorney Jackson, like the Solo cups that you see at backyard barbecues, they hold liquid terrifically.
We utilized cups, plastic cups.
Those were red Solo cups, right?
That's good.
The same kind of red Solo cups we drink beer out of the bar.
Yeah, sure, you could.
They're also not sealed, correct? They are not. Which carries attorneys confused. So what you did instead was you gathered red Solo cups from a neighbor, you unsterilized and scooped up the snow with what you thought the blood was and just carried them back to the truck?
Nope, we took 6 samples, individual samples. Our philosophy was to let the crime lab extract it the way they best see fit. Those 6 samples were bagged and then transported back to the Canton Police Headquarters and placed into evidence.
Which is basically what Jackson said, but like make LinkedIn font. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I feel as if the internet sleuth that cops like to look down on would have made smarter choices in regards to evidence protocols. This feels like a Home Depot dad coming across a baby stray animal that they're trying to take in, DIYing the whole process on the front lawn, which even Gallagher knows he's goofy. Oh, and another side note, I'm so sorry, before we move on, Tom Keller, the deputy, never goes out to investigate. Deputy of the Canton Police Department, another cop is found dead right across the street. Ryan Albert never comes out to see what's going on in his front lawn. Tom Keller never comes out. What's going on?
And she's the one that's going to need to make footage or not?
Well, he says along the lines of, and it wasn't rings, it was like a whole argument, it's like a different, what do you call it, Arlo, and everyone's like, that's not the point, you know what the point is, but all the Canton cops are like, well, first of all, it's not real. It doesn't get that in the security footage, so it just rewrote itself, because you know how every day it just rewrites itself, unless you save the footage. And he basically knew that it wasn't going to cover that area, so essentially, it is.
This is who's running the town. Even if it's not covering that direction, they will pull the footage even from like down the street.
They will.
Because they were trying to see who drove by at what time.
In regards to the leaf blowing, Paul Gallagher says, I thought someone may wonder why I decided to use a leaf blower, so I wanted to demonstrate the effectiveness. That is why we have a video of it, because even Gallagher knows that he's goofy. The video is bad. You just see him leaf blowing directly onto droplets of blood in the snow, because that's precisely what you would want to do at a crime scene. That is what they bring back to the police station, 6 Solo cups filled with melted snow debris and blood. Those 6 Solo cups, by the way, are placed in a wide open brown bag, like a grocery bag. And it is a grocery bag. It says Stop and Shop on the side of it. And that is also left all the way open and brought back to Canton Police Station. They find that day, along with that, pieces of glass that seem to belong to a cocktail glass, a drinking glass. And they bring those back to the police station. They put the blood in the evidence refrigerator, which the snow will presumably melt pretty instantaneously if it had not already. I would nickname this guy Goofy Gallagher. If anything about this case were actually goofy, but it's more terrifying than anything. And he is so serious when he tries to justify all the insane things that he's done on the scene. Why do you use this stuff in China? He's asked by the defense. they're basically the same thing as an evidence bag. I don't know where the bag came from. I was in a personal vehicle at that point. Sergeant Lank was also in a personal vehicle. He tries to argue that the Stop and Shop bags are similar to evidence bags. Quote, if the bag were upside down, you wouldn't know it. It did say evidence on it. I'm not sure where the bag came from, but our evidence bags are pretty much the same thing. The defense attorney is like, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, and that's why evidence bags are much more expensive, isn't that right? They're not quite the same, are they? No. And obviously the bag, it goes without saying, is not forensically sterile either, correct? Most bags are not sterile. Later, Sergeant Blank, this guy, besties with Chris Albert, we're getting into that later. He says, he's looking at the picture and says, it looks like a Stop and Shop bag. It might be an evidence bag. The defense attorney is like, it literally is not. It's a Stop and Shop bag.
No, it's a Stop and Shop bag. But actually, it looks like an evidence bag. It just doesn't say Camp Police on it. Stop and Shop, but it does look like an evidence bag. It's the same thing.
That's a grocery bag.
It is. And that's exactly what our evidence bags look like, so that's what I thought it was at first.
Right, except it doesn't say anything about evidence on it. It says Stop and Shop, correct?
Correct.
It makes it an evidence bag. I'm sorry, Stop and Shop bag.
I'm not sure.
And it's the seriousness in this thing for me. At one point, they say we did not document which scoop went into which cup. Which scoop of snow and blood went into which cup.
Crazy.
Medicines are going insane. They're writing, imagine the embarrassment. Who collects evidence in beer pong cups? Another one writes, wonder if they put urine samples in Slurpee cups. One says, the Stop and Shop bag evidence is so abysmal that we can't help but wonder if they have a Stop and Shop deal.
So you're saying they collected, quote, blood, 6 cups, and some glasses.
Yes.
What about the cartel line? Can we collect those?
Oh, you'll see. Now, mind you, this guy right here, Gallagher, made $322,389 that year.
How?
Is he just a
How?
No, he's a sergeant. He's a lieutenant.
That much?
Good. No.
Oh, the state. Wait,
No, he's a candidate cop.
Anthony, come on now. 320?
Yeah.
Is that average? That doesn't sound right.
It sounds like a lot.
How did you know that?
It's public record.
Is everyone making that?
No, but he's pretty high ranking. Officer Lank also gets promoted. He ends up making, I think, almost $250,000, 200,000. And this is how they are investigating. I'm sorry, if you're getting paid together, just you two are getting paid $500,000 on taxpayer money, you better know how to collect evidence.
And you're saying there's not a single piece of cartel line that they found?
The timing is very important in this, keep in mind. Later, another forensic expert is testifying about something completely unrelated. Well, not completely unrelated, but she is testifying about dog DNA, and we're going to come back to this. But the defense used her cross-examination to just randomly ask her about forensic processes. And they asked her, so you wouldn't use plastic to get blood. She's testifying about sterile procedures. Everything we use in our lab is sterile. All of our tubes that we would use, or once we do a collection, we put it in a tube for the extraction process. Those tubes are autoclaved and they don't have any contamination. They're sterile. So you wouldn't use a solo cup. At this point, she just looks at him and goes, I'm sorry, what?
They are sterile. You can use a solar cup.
I'm sorry, what?
Injection on the solar cup.
The injection system.
She looks genuinely confused and concerned. And he is so proud of this.
That is correct.
Side note, Gallagher has also worked with the DEA, the Drug Administration, for 15 years, which some medicines believe add to this. And also ATF, there's lots of drug overlap there. So lots of people believe there's lots of drug connections everywhere. But technically they are law enforcement and drugs are a big part of law. Sergeant Good, however, there's lots of connections here. Sergeant Good also grew up with Courtney Proctor, Trooper Proctor's sister. There were only 144 students graduating that year, so their class is very small. I imagine they were friends. If not, they knew each other rather well. Lank went to high school with Courtney Proctor as well, but also with a girl named Jill. Who is Jill? Jill's not on here, but Jill is Julie Albert's sister. And he's Chris Albert. Always has also work in the same office as ATF Brian Haha Higgins. And this is what's crazy. These are the Canton cops that actually go into 34th Fairview at the scene. Gallagher and Link walk into 34th Fairview to talk to Jen McCabe. Later, Trooper Proctor will go to Jen McCabe's house to talk to Jen McCabe, but this is the first actual interview, and this is after they recuse themselves, or they're thinking about recusing themselves, and they talk to Jen McCabe, they talk to Brian Albert, they don't search the house, they don't ask to search the house, but they're inside the house, and it's just weird. They don't write a report memorializing the conversation, or really anything, especially Gallagher, and his whole excuse to all of that is just, well, I don't write reports, I'm the supervisor. Why would I write a report? That's not my responsibility. That's for the losers like Link.
That is correct.
That's the vibe. And they're just letting everybody talk to everyone. At this point, everyone in the house, a lot of these people have stated there wasn't one meeting. A lot of people were at 34th Fairview that morning, and we're going to get into these two a little bit later, but just to give you a recap, throughout the morning of 34th Fairview, lots of people stopped by. Already inside the house were Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and birthday Brian Albert Jr. Jen McCabe is there because she came there with Karen and she called 911. Matt McCabe shows up because Jen McCabe calls her husband and is like, oh my gosh, we found John O'Keefe dead in the snow. Eventually, Julie Albert shows up. Julie Albert shows up completely randomly. She says, it's Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday. Here's what I do. It's a birthday tradition that I get him 6 Dunkin' Donuts and I put them in his car, which already doesn't make sense because it's a blizzard. I don't think birthday Brian's going anywhere, so when is he going to find the Dunkin' Donuts that he just put inside of his car? 10 years later, he shows up, and then Brian Albert, who sees nothing, hears nothing, nothing. Julie Albert putting donuts in the car and he's like, hey, come in. We're going to tell you something. So they tell Julie. Julie goes back home, gets Chris. They drive back to Brian Albert's. Brian Higgins got a phone call from Brian Albert and Chief Berkowitz that morning, but he doesn't pick up Chief Berkowitz's call. He calls Brian Albert back and he's like, you better come over. He ends up coming over. Brian Haha Higgins works at the Canton Police Station. These people work at the Canton Police Station. Brian Higgins has testified that he was at 34th Fairview that morning. These two guys are like, I don't know if you saw Brian. What do you mean you don't know if you saw Brian? You work with Brian. He works in the same office. You wouldn't remember if you saw him, correct? No? They're like, well, I don't recall having a conversation with him, so I can't tell you if he was there. At one point, Michael Lang also states that he had mentioned to another officer that he believed that John O'Keefe might have been in a fight, like he could have been in a fight or something. To which the defense attorneys asked him, if he had been in a confrontation, it could have started anywhere. He's like, yeah, if he had been in a confrontation, it could have started anywhere. It doesn't mean that it started in the house, which is why we didn't feel the need to search the house. It's not like, oh, the house is the crime scene. Right. But the house is part of anyone, right? Correct. So in other words, the house is not excluded in your mind at this point as a starting point for the investigation. Is that right? The starting point would have been where Mr. O'Keefe had been discovered, and then based on speaking with the witnesses, there was no indication that he ever made it into the house. I learned that speaking to Ms. McCabe.
So you just took Mr. McCabe's word for it?
At that point in time, that was the only person I had spoken to, and she gave me a timeline of events from that night where Mr. O'Keefe was supposed to come back to the house, but never made it.
Have you ever been in your course of investigating cases? You ever been lied to by a witness?
Yes, sir.
So it's not necessarily the best investigative technique to just take a witness' word for something, correct? You need to actually investigate the circumstances for yourself to your own satisfaction. Is that a fair statement?
Sure.
It is incredibly weird, is it not, that at least 4, maybe even more Canton police detectives searched Brian Albert's front lawn for evidence the day that they found John O'Keefe's body. They find a cocktail glass. They find blood. But they don't find hairline pieces.
It's a cocktail glass. It's like a glass cup.
Like a whiskey cup. You know, like a cocktail, you put some whiskey, put vodka in there, and a real big drinker. Yeah. So, Karen was seen leaving C.F. McCarthy's with a glass. Are you allowed to do that? No, you're not. Okay, she snuck it out. She didn't finish her drink, so she snuck out her little glass. And then I believe that same glass was seen walking out of waterfall, but it's not a O'Keefe's can. It's from the law, but the point that the defense attorneys are trying to make is that these sergeants from Canton Police, they didn't know it was from the law. So you would think that it's from inside the house. So you should search inside the house. but they don't. They don't. The number of pieces of taillight that are found by these at least 4 minimum police officers looking for evidence while it's still bright outside are 0. They used a literal leaf blower and they have spotted not one piece of Karen Reed's taillight.
The color is red.
Red and clear plastic pieces. And some of these taillight pieces that they're showing, it's like the size of a banana, bright red. It's only later in the day when the snow starts really starting to accumulate that the police miraculously, sun goes down, snow is pouring down, that they start finding pieces of taillight on the property. And, people argue. You don't think that's weird? The police only start finding pieces of the taillight later in the day? That's a little bit strange, don't you think? So they find them later that day, and then for the next few weeks, they find more pieces of taillight. These taillight pieces, I don't know if they just magically appear. The trooper trolls, they try to argue that it's because the snow is now melting and the evidence is unearthing itself. They keep using that word. More evidence starts to present itself, which is a very interesting phrase that you could choose from. But some people argue, well, it's because these guys are not really trying to find evidence. I mean, look at them. They're doing solo cuts. How do you expect them to find evidence? It's not until later that Trooper Tully, Troll Tully, we don't like Tully, nobody likes Tully, okay, just keep that in mind. He decides that he's going to employ the CERT team from the Massachusetts State Police. The CERT team is a special emergency response team. So they just kind of go from place to place in Massachusetts, helping any law enforcement agency that needs the help. He gets them out there, and they conduct a search where they find John O'Keefe's hat and a few pieces of taillight. And then for the next few weeks, they find 40 plus more pieces of taillight, which begs the question to a lot of people, wait, so the CERT team that are normally better qualified to find evidence, they only find a few pieces of taillight, and then suddenly there's 40 more pieces of taillight? And the documentation of where these taillight pieces are found are horrendous. They just took a picture of the taillight in the grass with the snow. Most of these pictures don't have any sort of relation point of, is it next to the flagpole? Is it next to the hydrant? Nothing. You have no clue where on the lawn these pieces of taillight are from.
So they're saying that the snow takes weeks to melt.
Yeah, and as the snow is melting more and more, they're unearthing. Evidence starts to present itself. That type of phrasing by a police officer, by a law enforcement officer, should be criminal. Present itself? I'm sorry, then why are you getting paid? It's crazy. Now, Prosecutor Lally asks Proctor where the taillight pieces are found. He's not even asking for exact locations, which is what you would imagine would happen in an investigation. He's asking, generally speaking. Proctor does a full-chested sigh.
Generally, I don't specifically remember exactly if they were around the flagpole, because the CERT team had came and shoveled an area around, so that stuff had melted first because there was a lot less snow, and then they created more piles. But as far as the general area was by the flagpole and fire hydrant, it wasn't like on the other side of the property, it was in that general area.
Nobody disagrees with the fact that these are pieces of taillight from Karen Reed's SUV. That is a fact. They just argue how and when it got there. Now, just to give you a bit of a timeline on this, evidence starts to present itself starting the night of January 29th. John is found at 6 in the morning. By about 6 p.m., taillight pieces are found. But prior to that same day, Karen finds John. Karen is rushed to the hospital. She's Section 12. She gets released, goes to John's house, feels unwelcome, gets her car, and drives her to her dad's house in Dayton. The troopers, they decide that they're going to go to Karen's dad's house and seize her car that day. They take her car, bring it all the way to Kent Police Department, which is already a little bit suspicious. People thought it was weird. These two troopers, they're part of the Massachusetts State Police, and they have 2 facilities that are MSP nearby Dayton. But instead, they have Dayton Police told recuse themselves from this case. So it's very odd. On top of that, it's very odd that taillight pieces continue to be found on the lawn for up to 2 weeks after the so-called accident. Chief Berkowitz, as well, happened to be driving by 34 Fairview Road out of nowhere, February 4th, 2022. And look at this man. I'm sorry, but this man is a little bit older. This man does not look like he has 20/20 vision. He's driving by February 4th, 2022. He stops his car and he sees on the lawn of the Albert residence from his car driver's side a shiny piece of taillight sitting on the lawn. Most of the
Really?
taillight pieces are found by this man, Trooper Proctor. All of these things are very odd about this, and it makes people believe, well, wait a minute, maybe these taillight pieces were planted on the lawn. It doesn't make sense.
So for people who believe that's the case, then where do they get the pieces from, the taillight pieces from then?
We're about to get into that. For the people that are saying, hey, that doesn't make sense that you just find pieces of taillight after so many people have searched it, and you keep continuing to find it in an unsecure location, they don't secure the scene. This guy, McKennick, he said, well, no, it makes total sense. In fact, it's common sense. He says, well, common sense will dictate that if an item is found on the grass and there's snow covering that item, it would have to have been placed prior to the snow accumulating. So if an item is shoved into the snow, it'll be exposed as the snow melts prior to reaching the ground level. He's saying there was snow on top of it, and that's why we didn't find it immediately. And it makes sense, okay? So they tow her car. They also investigate the scene. They find more taillight pieces. Except it doesn't make sense at all, because this man hits the stand. His name is Sergeant Nicholas Barrows. He has zero connection to the Canton Police Department. He works instead for the Dayton Police Department, which is the jurisdiction that resides over Karen's dad's house, where the car is seized. He showed up to Karen Reed's house too, because he's working in cooperation with Proctor and McKennick for towing Karen's car. He testifies on the stand.
I saw that there was some damage to the right rear taillight. To my best ability and recollection, that taillight was not completely damaged. It was cracked, and that a piece was missing, but not completely damaged.
When you say a crack, do you mean a piece missing? A piece was missing. A piece maybe about 6 inches big, maybe about 2 inches wide. He's shown a picture of Karen's Lexus from Sallyport. So this is a picture that the troopers have taken. And he's like, that is the car. Yeah, that's the black Lexus. But that's not the taillight the day that I was there at Karen's house. He said it's not. He's asked, is this the condition of the right rear taillight when you showed up at the house on the afternoon of January 10th, 2022? Absolutely not. What's different about this photo, sir? The taillight is completely smashed out. He's saying the right side trunk is completely missing. That was not the case at Karen Reed's dad's house. None of this, the middle section is missing. That's not the case either. I mean, Dayton PD are the ones that towed Karen's truck back to Canton Police
But
Department.
they don't have records of what the condition was, right? There's no photos, there's no comparison.
There's a photo, but it's not a great quality photo, and there's snow all over both taillights. Canton Police and the troopers are arguing it's missing. You just can't really see it because the snow is covering. Nicholas Barrows is like, bro, I was there.
Wow.
I was there. But the troopers are also saying, I was also there, and it was just like that.
So when Barrow saw that, he said there's only a 6x2.
Yes.
That's it. That's like pretty small, right? In the photos, the whole thing is missing.
Like a good chunk of it is missing. A lot of the red parts are missing, and they try to argue that's why when she presses the brakes, it's not even lighting up red at that section. They're trying to argue lots of different things. The whole thing is weird. Now, another question is, why did you take it to Canton Police Department on top of what Sergeant Nicholas Barrows is saying? It's just getting weird. McKennick says it's because the garage there is heated and they needed the snow to melt off. But the timing on
I'm sorry I have to stop this. I got a live stream on Rumble where I want to stream part 2 of this. Hope to see y'all there. If you like what you saw today, please continue to like, share, subscribe. See y'all later. Peace.